Hey everyone, Chad Frantzen with the Kingdom Finance Show. I wanted to give you an introduction for today's show. I have a longtime friend, Jared Anderson, on today's show. I think you're really going to enjoy it. I wanted Jared to come on because he is such an inspiration with just how the Lord has gifted him with story and imagination and creativity. Jared is a very super humble artist. He has written some incredible worship songs such as Great I Am and Amazed and many others that you've heard in churches all over the world. Kelly and I have gotten to know he and his wife, Megan, over the last several years. And I always come away inspired and encouraged from my time with him. So enjoy this conversation. We talk a lot about the divide of sacred and secular, and really how even in the world of creativity and poetry and songwriting, how you can bypass just the traditional mind to get into areas that God wants you to be when it comes to creativity. I think you'll be really blessed by this. And as Jared says on the show, life is a dress rehearsal. So enjoy today's program with Jared Anderson and Chad Franzen on the Kingdom Finance Show. Jared, welcome to the show.
Oh man, thank you. It's good to be here with you.
So Jared is a good friend. He and his wife Megan and family live in Colorado Springs, close to Kelly and I. And Jared and I have had a chance to share a lot of life together and walk together through things. And um, one of the things I've shared on the show is I wanted to start bringing people on in my world that I thought would be inspiring to people listening to the program. And so, Jared, you were at the top of the list.
Oh,
So thanks for working us into your busy summer schedule. I appreciate it.
it's an honor for sure.
Yeah. So how's life for you? How are things?
Man, the summer in Colorado is where I don't want to leave. You just want to be outside all the time. And it's refreshing. I had a friend visit recently and he from New Jersey, and he just gets out of the car every time I'd see him, he'd be like, "Bro, you live here. I can't believe I know you know this, but you live here. It's blowing my mind." So just trying to be in it. It's inspiring, it's renewing and refreshing. So doing your work in the landscape of this awesome scenery. That's the name.
Hmm. Yeah. And you're from here originally, right? You grew up in Colorado Springs most of your life, correct?
Yeah, since I was 9 years old. So
Yeah.
yeah, can't get rid of me.
Well, do the mountains ever get old looking at 14,000 foot peak outside your
No,
neighborhood?
no, it's in my bones now.
It's in your bones. Love it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, Jared's got a lot to share just from his, life and experience. And I was telling Jared just before the show, I mean, one of the things that the Lord's gifted you with is just this ability to tell story and really creativity and imagination, as I mean, I think imagination is a spiritual gift. Right. I mean, I think the Bible just gives examples of spiritual gifts, but I think you really inspired me and a lot of other people just with how you tell story and how you encourage people with imagination. But maybe give folks a little bit of background on kind of your story.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up very devoted, very I guess to like devout Christian. And when I mean that, like I think the biggest story in my family was how my grandparents, my mother's parents, had given their lives as missionaries um, to a people in Indonesia, in Papua New Guinea, these kind of Aborigine um, tribe where they had gone in and to live and learn the language, and they had gone on this big adventure to share the gospel, like to share faith. And
Mhm.
um, So my dad was in construction, my mom was a nurse, but there were these stories, and there was this cultivation, and church was kind of where the it was church is like the rehearsal of the big stories. And uh for us, in kind of more of like a Pentecostal, charismatic, and there was a lot of attention given to people that could tell the story very in a capturing, very dynamic, dramatic way. So, and of course, as they're telling them, there's these scripture stories. So you're learning the Bible that way through storytelling. And you start to catch you start to catch the myth. You start to catch where the faith is, like what it means to believe and what it means to struggle and suffer. So it was in that kind of environment that I guess my like original imagination started to
Mm.
take shape. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's powerful, powerful family legacy there. And then um, Jared's a very accomplished recording artist, worship leader, singer, songwriter. Can't really put a title on you. You've done so many different things, and you're doing some cool stuff with a nonprofit called Friends of Club 21, which we'll talk about as well. And I want people to connect with that. But maybe share a little bit of you know the work you did, kind of early career, just in songwriting, leading worship. I mean, there was a lot of different things that you were doing. Maybe take us back into your 20s a little bit, and what
Sure.
that looked like. And um,
Yeah. So this whole I almost want to call it like a faith experiment, because my own parents eventually decided to leave their jobs and go onto the mission field right about the time I was like 6 years old. So I say I grew up in Colorado, but it was kind of broken up with these two stints in Malaysia with Youth with a Mission, which is a mission organization that has a tendency to be very faith driven, and almost very, I don't want to say progressive, but very high risk. Let's call it that.
mhm, sure.
Uh, they raise their own support. They have um, very decentralized leadership. It's kind of like fake it till you make it a lot of times in that organization. And
Mhm,
this kind of, high risk, high yield um, adventures, right? Investments. They were like uh, literally people like these were the stories that I grew up with of people praying, like small group of people praying of like, God, what do we want more of you. And someone would hear from the Lord that they should go to the airport, and they have no tickets and no money, and they would go to the airport, and somehow one thing would lead to another, and they would get on the other side of the world in some destination. And there was always some like miracle that happened, right? So there's
yeah.
this almost fantastical approach to life that meant this is what it meant to follow Jesus.
Hmm.
And that can kind of jack you up in some ways.
Hmm.
Whereas you're like, why are we doing this crazy, um, yeah, just kind of crazy, very, very risky, right?
Yeah.
And but my own there was this, I don't want to say exaltation, but there was this value of sacrifice. There was a value
Mhm.
of all the chips in, of all in. And so into my 20s kind of became this tension of like, uh, I mean, I believe this stuff, but this is not, I'm not comfortable with all this. This is
Mhm.
maybe harder than it has to be. And so I came in kind of wrestling. Honestly, did not want to work at the church. I was like, I just don't think this is for me. I don't, I can't really wave the flag like you guys do.
Yeah.
I I kind of wanted something else. But I didn't know what that was. I just knew
Mhm.
that I didn't, it wasn't like resonating with me.
Mhm.
So that's where yeah, I would say even the songs and part of the worship is the wrestling through, the wrestling out of that. What do I do with this? Like, I believe, but not like that. Or I believe more like
Mhm.
this, not like that, it's searching
Mhm.
for that language.
And
Yeah.
was that really what got you into songwriting? Kind of when you're in that searching process and just went to the writing side of it?
So in high school, um, I started to learn, I started to learn the script of my childhood, as we all do.
Yeah.
And I started to get tired of it. And what woke me up was high school English class.
Mm.
Started reading poetry, and I got into a couple novels that um, they turned my crank. They're like, I'm like, this is a different voice than what I'm used to. And it was the subversive, and this is the way I describe it, is poetry is like saying it without saying it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Don't just like say I love you. We compare you to a rose, right? Like, so I don't come like directly at the target. It's an indirect, and it leaves the reader wondering, like, oh wow. While my while my childhood had a lot, I mean, they kind of were like arms dealers of mystery, right? They had the miracles
Mhm.
and things with the spirit, spiritual realm, and it's us versus them, and it's demons versus angels, and um, that lingo started to become so familiar that it kind of wore out. It
Yeah.
wasn't alive. It wasn't mysterious anymore, right? It kind of became a box in which I was very comfortable but unsatisfied. So poetry became that like, wait, what did you
Mhm.
say? I got my first car and started listening to Counting Crows, this band. And
Yeah. Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, Mr. Jones and that whole like, I'm like, wait, what are they talking about? Like,
Mhm.
not sure where they're coming from. And I think I know what this song's about, but it's really unclear. And I was so captivated by the unclarity
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
everything else was like, oh, that's either Christian or it's not
Black
Christian.
and white. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
either,
Everything's black and white. Yeah.
like you said earlier,
Mhm.
the sacred and the secular that was very organized in its own way.
Yeah.
So different from most, but, um, like any grow up in a small community and you have the regular routine,
Mhm.
the norms. And so poetry kind of started to wake me up into like, huh, wow, I guess these people are thinking differently They're riding differently. So I started it became like a way to leave my family and leave the normal and kind of poke
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
things that maybe were true or I wasn't so sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. Who's one of your favorite poets?
Hmm. Man, good question. Um, I mean, I was at that moment, I was head first into like Wordsworth and Keats and kind of the ones that they teach you in high school. I don't know that I have a favorite. Of course, Mary Oliver, her stuff.
Yeah.
I read that quite a bit. And I don't read as much. I subscribe to like this thing called Secret Chord. It's like poem of the day or whatever. I love it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really have a favorite poet at the moment. But one of my like godfather, mentor, like Eugene Peterson, who I greatly esteem, wrote a lot
Yeah.
of poetry. It was kind of part of his practice. So um yeah.
Mm. And
Charles.
how did Peterson approach that in his own story with writing poetry? I mean, what was his how he walked with God through poetry and seeing
Sure.
life?
Oh, I think poetry for him would be a heart cry. Um, when we're dealing with, even in finance and in this organized world, um, there's this cry for more. And even in church and in religion, we have the same norms and the same routines. And poetry is, I mean, prophetic, really, to announce the bigger story above
Mm-hmm.
above the totalism. And that's a term um, that I learned from Walter Brueggemann, but calls the totalism is like we're told everything we're told that exists that can be offered in the current economy. That's the totalism, and it's not the whole story. And poetry helps you to engage a bigger story than what can be commodified and traded with transactions. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the goal. That's the purpose of the artist, is to announce
Yeah.
that bigger story, um, that's beyond what we see and what we trade in and what fits into our calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It almost bypasses, what I hear you say is it poetry, prophetic poetry, it bypasses the system in a way, like to where your mind is wired. This is how life is. This is what you do. This is how you, we're talking about finance and business. This is how you run a business here. This is how you do your work. This is how you do your money. But like this actually bypasses around that to a whole nother
Totally.
realm of beauty and opportunity.
Yeah, this makes me think, I was trying to explain to my daughter what speaking in tongues is.
Yeah.
And because this is the spiritual discipline of bypassing the mind, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, how does that work? How do you learn that? And so I tied it to this thing. Do you know what scatting is in jazz? Like when a vocalist starts scatting, or when an instrumentalist takes a solo.
Mm-hmm.
When they solo, and the the solo version for a vocalist is called scatting, and they start doing this like they just make up
Yeah.
syllables, and they like solo like an instrument. And the point of a solo is not preparation.
Mm-hmm.
It's that the instrumentalist or the singer makes it up in the moment,
Right.
responds
Cool.
in the moment. So don't plan it, just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially what speaking in tongues is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
go for it, don't think about it.
Yeah.
That's how you engage the spirit. And it's like a muscle that you can
Mm-hmm.
exercise. And that's the act of imagination. That's the gym, that's the practice. And you can get better at it the more you do
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful illustration because I know even, we do a lot of business and finance investing coaching here, and like even taking that concept of music, poetry, how do you bypass, the normal everyday life and routine. It's the same concept, but this is a great illustration for it of, well, if we want to invest or run our business differently with kingdom perspectives, how do we really tap into that to where we're not doing what Harvard Business School says, or we're not doing what Wall Street says. Like maybe we don't want to support certain companies that violate sanctity of life, or that involved in human trafficking or things like that. So that's a really good illustration, Jared. And I think, you know, I don't know anything about music, but for me, that like connects with like, well, how do you run a business and how do you invest differently? You have to tap into this other area that's absolutely available, but you're not going to get there how you got previously to where you were. Like you're going to have to
Yep.
do something different. Like you said, get out of the box. And um so that's a really good illustration.
There is a level, and I think the reason I was trying to explain it that way to my daughter about speaking in tongues, because I think she was thinking like, why would I want to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when she listens to, but when I played her some jazz and played her some
Huh?
solo, she's like,
What is that? Yeah.
that's that's pretty
Mhm.
cool, right?
Mhm.
And the truth is that if you have any proclivity or any tendency, if you have ever had any routine with prayer, you understand how maybe somehow scripted and predictable and routine, dull, right? Rehearsed, oversaturated, overcooked, and
Mhm.
you're hungry for something fresh. And that's where this comes in, is like this new
Yeah.
muscle that you can leave the script, you know, and you can come back. That's fine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you can leave for a while, and leaving will actually enhance the experience and the
Mhm.
outcome.
Mhm.
So the act of imagination and the prophetic work of art has a big part to play in how we follow Jesus, how we follow
Mhm.
Christ in every aspect.
Mhm. That's powerful. Yeah. Well, I want to ask you about some of the songs you've written. So many of you listening, you've definitely heard some of Jared's songs. I know you've written several amazing ones, some that other artists perform. But so I want to talk a little bit on that. I know you're super humble, but I want to pick your brain on that. You've told me this story, but share a little bit about The Great I Am, which I think everyone listening has heard that, but you've told me kind of the story behind the song and how that came about when you were writing it. And maybe share a little bit about that just to
Yeah.
give people a lens of how that, what we're talking about with imagination, and how that
Mhm.
comes into even a finished product that people hear all around the world.
Yeah. Um, you don't, I wish I could say I intended to do this. Um, Part of where my songwriting and my intention is kind of like intending to go to therapy. You don't know what's going to come out of therapy. You just intend to
Yeah.
go because you're
Yeah.
like, I'm not sure what I need, but I think I need something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And art and songwriting and music, and even if you're playing someone else's music, it has that uh regeneration in it. So
Mm-hmm.
we had moved houses and we had little babies, and in our original house, once the babies went to sleep, I couldn't play the piano. And we we moved, and I all of a sudden had the piano like in the front of the house when the kids were at the back, and there was enough separation that I could actually play. And I was just lost in life, which is, you know, not abnormal for me. So, like, where am I going? What am I
Yeah.
doing? I don't know what I'm doing. Um, so we had sold our house and moved into this rental house, and I think I had quit my position at New Life where I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing what's next. Should we move? If so, where? We ended up moving to Nashville, but it was in this like limbo state, which is where a lot of creativity, like in that state, even between like you're waking and you're sleeping. That's why a
Mm-hmm.
lot of artists get high, right? It's because there's this, you see stuff in the golden hour, the in between states that you don't see at night or during the day, but it's even for me in that stage in that season of life, or in between jobs or career,
Right.
I was crying out and I wrote that song over a couple nights, just like I've written hundreds, and I have stacks of notebooks full of songs, and looking back, there's a quality to where for the song "Great I Am" that there's a drawing near in the song. I want to be close. I want to be near. I want you. I want you. And then when you get to the bridge or to the chorus, there's this there's this feeling of, okay, the mountains shake before you, the demon nobody can stand. No, I can't handle you.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
this holy, like, I want you, and this holy, I can't handle you. I
Mm-hmm.
gotta go backwards. I gotta find reverse in this car because I cannot deal with all that you are, right? That's the, and that's how I felt in life. Like I want to
Yeah.
move forward, but I can't, this is too much
Yeah.
for me,
Too
right?
much.
It's too much. I can't handle it. I'm overwhelmed. I'm floored. I'm a puddle. I can't stand, you know? And there is no power in hell or any who can stand before the power and the presence of the great I am. I'm hosed.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't near you. I want to be near you, but I'll probably die.
Mm-hmm.
That that's the sentiment of that song. And it did sit on the shelf for 2.5 years. I wasn't leading anywhere regularly in that time. And so I wouldn't have taken the risk to introduce it anywhere or, try it out as
Yeah.
we worship leaders do. So I moved to Nashville. I came back. I was there a year. Came back to New Life, not on a staff position, but I was involved. And they were trying to do another project. And they said, can you submit your songs? Well, I submitted all these songs I'd written in Nashville that I thought were so cool. And I got no feedback on any of them from the team. And I started wondering, I went to the director and I was like, dude, like, I'd love to contribute to this project, but apparently nobody's smelling what I'm stepping in,
I got nothing.
I got nothing. So I said, can you talk to me about, like, what do you imagine? What's your gut when you think about this project? And so he started just kind of, I don't know what he said. He just started going on about it. And when he started talking, I was like, I think I have a song that sounds like what you're talking about. So I went and took him into the office and I played him the song right there, just at the piano. He's like, well, he said, it was his response, I don't know how people are going to respond to the whole demons run and flee thing, but you're leading in a couple weeks. Why don't you try it out?
Yeah.
And that was that. We tried it out. Then people were like, there's something on this. It ended up on the project. It wasn't until like 4 weeks before the record came out that the marketing team decided, they shifted from another song to that song to really promote it. So it's, no one knows what they're doing. That's the moral.
Yeah. Well, and just, I mean, the Lord can give you a download, an idea for a business or a song, and it might sit on the shelf,
Right.
but you put pen to paper, fingers to keys and did it in the moment, and then it sat there. I think there's a lot we can learn from that of, sometimes we don't follow up when the Lord leads, like he gave you that creative download when you're in that place, which is probably not the best place, but somehow it is the best place, right? to grab that creativity from the Lord. And then, but you didn't have any assumptions as to what it would become, right?
Sure.
But you just were obedient, and it probably was just ministering to you
with
where you and Megan were, and in your career and family. And
well, I think there's, that's a way to talk about this too, of like, do we feel like we have to do this task or this business or this thing for the world or for the church or for the family? I don't know. I mean, I've just in my own world of songwriters, it's like, well, I want to write songs for the church. And I'm like, well, you and I are the church. So here we are, trying to do things for the masses or for the markets or try to lead the masses, I think I don't know that we're really called to do that. I think we're called to like lead ourselves and lead those around us, beginning with in our own homes, right? Our children, spouse, like, let's do that well and trust that it's enough. I've had so many times where I'm like, look, you guys, like this is a freaking awesome song. Like this one, it's really, really good.
Yeah.
You can trust me because other people thought my other songs were good.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, doesn't work.
Well, and I guess in the end, it's whether you're songwriting or whether you're running a business or choosing how you manage your money, it's really you're ministering to the Lord, right? And it's you before the Lord. listening, giving him back that gift, whatever it is, whether it's super creative or whether it's even just like how to run a company. But um, yeah, I mean, I want to be about creating things that create a legacy,
Mhm.
right? That if it's even just my personal history with Jesus and what I leave for my children or grandchildren, that's a legacy for them to connect with
Right.
Jesus, not just to go out and make money or be, a highly sought after whatever. I think that's where a lot of us get lost in business, right? I mean, whether it's worship leaders or finance guys, I mean, we lose sight of the ultimate motivation for what we're doing.
Oh man, and it's rampant in the art world as it is in, finance and every other thing.
Yeah.
We we have this notion of being successful, right?
Yeah.
We we'd rather be successful than be ourselves, or we'd rather keep up with people we don't know or people we think we know than discover who we were truly made to be. Because it's so much easier to deal with people than deal with God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People are so much more manageable, and God is unmanageable. And He'll ask me to do things that no one else would ever ask me to do. And that's scary.
Yeah.
But that's where life is. That's where the life is. That's where the juice is. That's where the songs are. That's where the provision is. That's where the endless supply
Yeah.
remains. And not for a day or a moment, but for eternity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really matters. But we're so and I get distracted.
Yeah.
You see this, as soon as somebody does something successful, we're all going to steal their
Every,
idea.
yeah. Everyone gravitates to it. And how can I copycat it? How can I,
Give me the
yeah.
juice. What'd you do? What'd
Mm-hmm.
you do it?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Much easier to copy than to sit and be original.
Yeah. Yeah. Go create a click funnel to copy that, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
That
unsatisfying.
it is, right? I mean, I think of all the stacks of binders or wherever you have them digitally, the things you've written, like and I'm sure many of them people will never hear, but like that's you ministering to the Lord with the gifts and creativity He gave you. And I think that's a really good way to look at it. Of what are we doing with our families, with our businesses, whatever talents and gifts He's given us, of like, I'm just going to do it for the Lord. And if it, I need to provide for my family, but there are things where it's like, hey, I mean, that's not what it's 100% about when it comes to, do I take this job? Do I invest in this investment? Do I take this gig or work with these type of people? Like sometimes working with people in the Christian world is more challenging than working with people in the secular world, right? We could do a whole nother show on that, but like we're all becoming. So like, how do we continue to put Jesus first? And just what I hear you saying today is just how do we hear His voice and know what to do and how? Because sometimes if we don't hear His voice, you don't need to do that thing. You don't need to take that job. And you went to Nashville, you came back. I mean, I think that's a real powerful message for what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think that stay searching and I think if I looking back, there's places where I probably regret um walking so alone.
Hmm.
Um I think there's just you know, we want to take these risks, dignify our hearts, and still somehow be together with
Hmm.
people that see us, that are I can't say enough for good friendship. I mean, even in this context, you and I are friends, and like what friendship means, like when you know someone, you can tell, like, yeah, that's a good risk for you, or dude, I think you're
Mhm.
just having a rough day, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
You begin to imagine with people, and there's a synergy there that doesn't necessarily have to make sense on paper, but is very, very productive.
Mhm.
That um you can't don't minimize that, you know, when you found strength in a friendship or a partnership, it's exponential, uh the results like that. For instance,
Yeah.
my song could still be on the shelf, you know,
Mhm.
if the director at New Life hadn't wanted to do another project and partner with the
Yeah.
label and partner, right? Like
Mhm.
my song would never seen the light of day. It'd still be in the notebook.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's challenging to not go alone. I think we've talked about this just as friends of like it's you get through your 30s and into your 40s and you start to quote figure things out, whatever that means, but like you've got a career, you've made a little money, you've got a family, but like, I know a lot of men who get well into their 40s and 50s and they don't have any truly close friends. They have business associates, right? Whether it's at church or a business setting, but it's I think, for men, I think that's a huge challenge, right? We're trying to get out there and make it happen in ministry or business, and it's you wake up and you're like, well, I don't, who are my closest friends that I could call at 2 in the morning, or that we could share tough things together with.
mhm. Yeah, that partnership is invaluable because, yeah, when you get into tough times or you're back against the wall, you start making dumb decisions out of fear. When your faith is gone, you know, um, it's so unnecessary, right? It's not
Hmm.
just with staying with a little bit of support, staying connected, um, not letting not letting that busyness and the grind, the hustle
Yeah.
take over. Yeah. Because
Hmm.
that's part of working the imagination muscle, right? Is
Hmm.
um this unity, the just like the resonance people that play music together. You feel like you're in the band,
Yeah.
you're in the zone. You know, a lot of people feel that on a sports team,
Hmm.
basketball, call it like the flow. We've got a flow going where we're
Yeah.
working together in tandem. Um, I think we're looking for that. What is that flow for us? And then finding that flow in your imagination, that's where the poetry kind of begins to turn your mind into a different flow. That's different ways to receive, you know, that'll make you stronger and
Yeah. Yeah. It
yeah,
becomes more than just being about yourself, right? Like, one good business person or one good performing artist standing alone is one thing, but it's a lot more dynamic or a better sound if you're in a symphony or in a band
right.
with people going in the same direction.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Not walking alone for sure.
Yeah, that's good. Well, this has been really really insightful. Hey, I want to talk about before we wrap up. Tell us a little bit more about some of the work you're doing now. Kelly and I've gotten to see what you and Megan are doing firsthand with Friends of Club 21 and the Down syndrome community, families in the U.S. and abroad. Maybe share a little bit. I know you're super passionate about that, but tell us more about kind of how your creativity, how God's leading you in that work today.
Yeah. This will be our 10th year. Um, developing, kind of creating this. It's a stage show. It's like a family-friendly variety show um, at Christmas time called Christmas This Year. And we want just pull all the families that have kids with Down syndrome, kids and adults with Down syndrome, and we want to highlight their abilities and talents and tell their stories. So you can go to christmasthisyear.org and see some of our past shows. And um, I got started in it trying to raise a little money for a school in South Africa called Club 21, and that had just started a few years earlier and was struggling to get resource to educate these children. There's no public services over there for people with different learning styles. So we started developing this show. It became a passion, started uniting families in our own community, and now taking a greater role directing the organization and trying to raise the flag and trying to raise both awareness and support and really like change the narrative from something that we're like afraid of or feel sorry for or try to like pray for healing. This like chromosomal, it's an extra chromosome is what it is that causes this condition, or people say it's a disorder, right? It's like it's atypical. But we really want to see this community as valuable and a part of us. And how do we help that be a part of us? How do we receive that gift that we didn't think was a gift? So we support, the families. We've started a little choir. We're, just trying to raise the voice of this community here, and hopefully, this message or this path, this way will spread. We live stream the show and all those kinds of things. So yeah, that work. I've just found so much transformation. I don't know, life in that community. People have children with this condition that they didn't choose. They didn't know it was coming. They were just thrust upon them. They're forced to kind of adjust and relearn. And then in that process, they've awakened in some way that they're different. They're different. Their lives are changed because of this gift. And so I find a lot of resonance with that. It's endlessly fascinating to me. So even tonight, we're doing a cookout with a bunch of the dads from the show.
Oh, good.
So, yeah.
Oh, good. It's one of the few shows I've been to where you're going to laugh uncontrollably, and then at some point you're probably going to cry fairly uncontrollably. And it's really that powerful, which just, you talk about creativity and the whole spectrum of emotion. And so love what you're doing with that. So christmasthisyear.org, is that right? And so that's in Colorado Springs, but then you also do live stream. And then for I know we're helping you on the sponsorship side, trying to raise awareness. So if you're a small business owner and you want to learn more about sponsoring the show, reach out to me or through the website christmasthisyear.org. Our company sponsors it, and it's really, Jesus says, to go to the least of these, right? And I think this is a group of people who, there's no resources for it, and they often feel, labeled, right, and not welcome. And I mean, but it's really educated Kelly and I, like, if I see a Down syndrome family in the airport, in a restaurant, I have so much more compassion for them, and I'm very comfortable going up to talk to them, right? I don't feel like, oh gosh, like, no, you just, and those families, the children or young adults that have Downs, they have more joy and happiness than I have. And like, I come away like, and I'm sure you do too, Jared, like, I want that. I want that measure of joy, and there's no fear of man. They don't care what people think, right? I mean, we deal with that in business all the time. What do people think about me? And am I making everybody happy? And it's just so like pure, like just that's how God wants it. Like they're happy and joyful, and they don't care what you think of them, and they are living their best life.
Yeah. There's a innocence and like unfiltered way of living that and really like surrendered. Like they can't most people with Down syndrome will not drive. Most of them will not get married. Most of them will not have children. Most of them will not be like self-sufficient or live on their own.
Hmm.
And that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
how do you get to that place where it's like, yeah, this is what it is, and
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
okay. Like it's not bad, or it's not less than.
Yeah.
It's
No.
still beautiful and still worth all the care and all the celebration and all the
Yeah.
you know attention. So yeah, there is that, like, that's why I'm in it. I need it. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Well,
Yeah.
this has been fun, Jared. Thanks for being on the show today. Usually you and I are together in person, so it's kind of weird jumping on a video screen with you. We normally are together in person. I want to ask you two quick questions before we wrap up. Um, who would have you most enjoyed in your songwriting performing career? Who's someone you've really enjoyed, come away inspired from either writing with or performing with, that
Mm,
just inspired you personally, just in a real meaningful way?
yeah. There's a guy, well, you probably don't know him. His name's Lenny LeBlanc. Uh, he he wrote a song called "There's None Like You," old worship
Huh?
song.
Yeah.
Uh, Lives Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Been there his pretty much his whole life. Just the way he's just like he's an artist. Like, he does woodworking, he builds stuff. He's you know jack of all trades, and this monster guitar player, and this lyricist and a vocalist. And some of those people that they make it look effortless,
Yeah.
and kind of does art for art's sake. Like, he's
Mm.
just alive in it, and doesn't
Hmm.
there's not pretense, or he's not working his brand.
Yeah.
He's just uh travels internationally, and then serves at his local church. Does it kind
Hmm.
of guy both places.
Yeah.
That's been an inspiration to me when I've gotten to write with him, and I can listen to
Yeah.
his records, and I feel it takes me on the whole journey. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
And what closing advice would you give listeners just in, walking with God, kind of walking out life as worship with this imagination and creativity? I mean, I believe we all have it, right? I mean, some are going to express it in more artistic ways, but like, I mean, what advice would you give people of how do you really live life as worship, and tapping into that creativity and imagination that's freely available to all of us?
Yeah. I think I love the concept of, like, this is rehearsal. Like, this
Mm.
is rehearsal for eternity. We're just working out the kinks. We're teaching one another, trying to remember our lines,
Yeah.
to be hung up on perfection. We just want to be engaged in the rehearsal, you know?
Hmm.
So in rehearsal, you're not consumed with, you're aware of the whole picture, but you're not expecting that the whole picture is going to be complete yet.
Yeah.
You're still putting it
Hmm.
together, right? You're noticing where people are like, wow, this is really going well. This is crushing it. You notice when someone does something so good, you're like, oh, you got to bring that out. And then when someone destroys and, you know, falls off the stage or jacks up the whole thing, you're
Mhm.
not, you're not put out, right? You're not like
Mhm.
offended by that. You're like, well, this is why we rehearse, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's why
love that.
we're doing this.
Yeah. And I've heard you say that often, like, all of life is
Yeah,
rehearsal,
that's right.
right? And I think Dallas Willard said all of life is becoming, right? We're all becoming,
Yeah,
right? And so I think that takes the pressure off, right? I mean, it takes the pressure off as a, you know, husband, father, business owner, worship leader. I mean, right? It's just, hey, you know, this is rehearsal, and but we get to do this, right? Like we get to, as a privilege and opportunity, like we get to live this life and all the different opportunities, just like with the what you're doing with Friends of Club 21, right? Like, who would you have thought that 10 years ago? It probably wasn't on your radar, but like God brings those type of gifts, and you get to embrace them and not view it like it has to be perfect, right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm writing a song this morning for the Christmas show, just kind of gently beating your head against the wall. Like trying to trying to find it, out there looking for it.
It's there, right? You just gotta
Even if
you
it
gotta
helps.
bypass your normal brain, right?
Right.
That's so good.
Yeah,
Well,
man.
Jared Anderson, thank you for being here. Thank you for being my friend and encourager. And I wanted people to get to hear your story and just be encouraged by how God is walking with you in your life and just creativity. And so we'll sign off for the Kingdom Finance Show, and christmasthisyear.org if you want to learn more about that. And Jared, we'll go grab lunch.
Amen.
Thank you so much for joining me today on the Kingdom Finance Show. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps to get the word out. For more resources on becoming a Kingdom investor and to connect with us directly, visit our website at wealthbuilders.net. That's wealthbuilders.net. We'll see you next time on the Kingdom Finance Show. The content provided is for educational purposes only. We encourage you to seek personalized investment advice from your financial professional. For all tax and legal advice, please consult your CPA or attorney. Investment advisory services are offered through Authentic Counsel, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cabin Securities, a registered broker-dealer. The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer of securities. Offerings can only be made through an offering memorandum, and you should carefully examine risk factors and other information contained in the memorandum.